So, hi to everybody, and welcome to Breaking Free. Together, as you know, I'm Karen, and this is
Hello.
so I remembered my name this week, which is fab.
Woo.
So, thank you for tuning in with us. This week, we are talking about boundaries. Our boundaries, they're like invisible lines, aren't they? They protect us, they protect our time, they protect our energy, and they protect our safe space as well, which is why
Absolutely.
important that we put them in place to protect ourselves and to almost like draw a line in the sand and you're like you don't come any further than this in many different ways, emotionally, physically, in different ways to protect ourselves.
It really is important because that's where we teach other people how they're going to treat us.
Yeah.
It is definitely about keeping our safe space. It's also about keeping our emotional health. And it reinforces our own power, our
Yeah.
own self-empowerment. There's a powerful feeling you get from being able to put that boundary between you and whomever's trying to cross it.
Yeah.
And it gives you this great sense of well-being that you are protecting yourself
Yeah.
on, covering all of those areas that you have just mentioned. And we know, narcissists, they don't like boundaries and they will do absolutely anything possible to cross them and to push
Yeah.
them. So, when we think of a few examples of boundary violations from narcissists, they're
Yeah.
very good at sort of invading personal spaces and dismissing feelings or making you try and feel guilty or prying into your private matters or your invalidating your opinions. The list goes on. But all of those things are detrimental to somebody's mental health. You have narcissists who will open your mail, for example. Your letters come in through the house and there's your name on it, and someone will think it's perfectly fine to open your mail and read, and you're like, hang on, that is not okay. Or lifting your phone and looking at your messages, if you know that's not okay either. There are
No.
things that belong to you that you have a right to keep to yourself. It gives us this loss of
Yeah.
autonomy. I mean, your autonomy is your own personal belief systems, your principles, your ethic, and your right to choose what you share with other people and what you don't share with other people, which
Yeah.
is a God-given right. Nobody
Yeah.
can demand that from you, and they certainly shouldn't. But
No.
narcissists will, of course. And then
Well, because it's all about control, isn't it? And they don't want you to be in control of your own autonomy. They don't want you to be in control of your sense of self. They want to be in control of you. That's the whole point.
absolutely. And when you have either been in a relationship and you have had that autonomy taken away from you systematically over a period of time, or like ourselves, if you've been raised with a narcissist and you never had boundaries because you didn't know what they were because they
Yeah.
were crossed over all of the time. When you then try and put boundaries either back in place or putting them in place for the very first time, it's so hard because you feel guilt for us asserting your own needs. You feel guilty that you're saying, no, I don't want to do that, or no, you can't do this, or no, this is not okay. And there's a level of guilt then that's
Yeah.
induced from what they have made you feel or how they have made you feel.
Like somehow you don't have the right to make your own decisions or that you're punishing them. Because that's the other key thing is that boundaries is not about punishing people. It's not about saying, well, you can't do this because of this, or you're not trying to punish anybody.
No.
You're keeping yourself safe and you're keeping yourself, like you said, you're keeping your own autonomy.
Yeah.
And it's only when they push against that that you keep setting them in place, but they're the ones in the wrong for pushing against that. You're not in the wrong for setting them. You're not doing it to annoy anybody else or control anybody else. You're controlling your own self and you're controlling your own space and you're controlling what you accept as, or what you've decided to accept as being, well, this is what I accept and this is what I don't accept. And you have every right to make that decision for yourself. You're not trying to control anybody else. You're just saying, this is what I am happy to accept. This is what I'm not happy to accept. But that a narcissist will make you feel like, well, why are you punishing me? What did I do wrong? And make you try and guilt trip you and make you feel like you're going out of your way to be awful to them by setting these boundaries, aren't they?
I wouldn't even say they see your needs as secondary. I would say they see your needs as non-existent.
Yeah, yeah,
Your needs are not important to a narcissist.
no,
What they want and how they are is the most important thing, and everybody else around them is only in existence to support that. And you're not important at all.
no,
You're not
no.
important. You are there a bit like a tripod, the tripod you put the cameras on. You're like one of
Yeah.
the legs. You know what I mean? You're not the
You
main
know, I was
camera in the main
Yeah,
store.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking of a scaffolding. Just as you were about to say that, I was thinking in my head, it's like anyone in a narcissist's life is the scaffolding to hold them up,
Yeah,
and they will use whatever they need to or whatever scaffolding they need to. And once one scaffolding falls down, or then they'll just move on to the next bit, they don't see people as individual people. They see them as tools, something to be used, and they will quite easily just move on to the next and move
yeah,
on to the next.
yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the type of boundaries and how we can use scripts to put these boundaries in place. Let's look at how we can put them in place and be as detached as possible
Yeah,
whilst doing it. So when we think about the physical, we'll go with the physical boundaries. We've got examples of personal space, physical touch, or privacy. Walking into bedrooms without asking,
yeah,
coming in too close, getting in your space when you're not comfortable with that. And I would say simply, I am not comfortable with hugs right now,
yeah,
or please knock before you enter my room.
yeah,
And that's a totally legitimate and reasonable thing to ask.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
I would,
definitely.
you would do it to your children. You would do it if you were in a situation where you want your privacy.
Yeah,
I don't want to hug. I prefer you didn't hug me. Thank you.
yeah,
I'm not a hugger. I mean, I am a hugger. So,
yeah,
if you're anywhere near me, you're gonna get hugged. You will have to tell me you don't want to hug.
yeah.
Stay away. But I am
I
a hugger.
tend to check with people, and not people that I know, but I tend to check people if I want to give them a hug. I say, "Oh, I'd love to give you a hug. Can I?" kind of thing, or
I probably
something
should
like
do that
that.
more often.
Yeah, and no,
I just open my
well,
arms.
that's well, they can always step back, and if they said to you, you wouldn't be offended by that. If they said, "Oh, I'm
No,
not really a hugger," you would be
not
like,
at
"Oh,
all.
right, no
Yeah,
worries."
yeah,
So it's all about the response as well. It's all about
absolutely.
how you respond. It's not, it's whereas if
I am
narcissists,
joking a little bit. I
yeah,
am joking a little bit because, usually because of our childhood, I'm
mm,
very good on picking up, as you are, I'm very good at picking up cues from people
yeah,
of
yeah,
whether they
you
would
can
be
tell, yeah,
okay with that,
yeah,
because you can see, the micro expressions on their face, or just the energy emanating out of
yeah,
them that says, fuck off. I'm not
yeah,
available for a hug.
yeah,
Okay then.
yeah. Fair
Virtual
enough.
hug.
Fair enough. That's
I get it. That's totally fine.
mm,
Okay, so when we talk about we can that's our first boundary, physical boundaries,
yeah,
and then we've got emotional boundaries. We have every right to protect our feelings and decide what emotions we're willing to share, and we
yeah,
also have the right to refuse somebody else's emotional burden, as
yeah.
we were talking about just before we
You
started that
were, yeah,
podcast.
yeah,
I have to do my own boundaries on that one. But
yeah.
anyway, what would you say to that? For yourself, if you wanted to put something in place as a boundary, how would you approach that?
But I think, yeah, if sorry, if there's any banging going on, there's been work done in my house, so I'm just letting you know if I catch or you can hear banging, that's what it is. I'm having some work done.
It's
I
not
think,
really. She's burying bodies downstairs.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Digging the garden.
yeah,
I think, yeah, if somebody came to you with something and you didn't, it was overstepping your boundary, you didn't feel you could help them, you could literally say that. I can see that you're really upset, but I can't hold space for you right now,
yeah,
or I can't help you right now. I'm not in a good mind frame, or or
Yeah,
whatever, or I'm not comfortable discussing this right now. And again, I mean, sometimes we say, oh, I'm because of this or because of this, but in actual fact, just saying I can't do this should be enough. And it
absolutely.
depends who you're talking to. If it's a friend and you feel like you want to give them a bit of an explanation and they don't normally overstep your boundaries, then maybe you would be happy to do that. If it was the person in your life that was a narcissist, then you absolutely do not owe them an explanation at all. You can just say,
Yeah,
I'm not in that, I'm not in that place right now. I can't deal with this. I can't listen to you right now.
yeah.
But at the same time, you can acknowledge that I can see you're upset, or I'm sorry you're struggling right now, but I just can't be there for you right now. You can acknowledge how they feel at the same time. You can say you can't help.
Yes, yes. And that's, I think, where most people will find it more difficult because we're used to then defending our boundary.
Yeah.
We like, I can't help you right now because blah, 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 and
Yes.
we need to kind of put something behind it because we think we need to put something behind
Yeah.
it to give it some weight or to explain the reason why we can't
Yeah.
be. That's not necessary.
No.
It's not necessary. For whatever reasons you are setting those boundaries are your reasons. Nobody else needs to know what those reasons
No.
are. You're just basically setting the boundary to say, sorry, can't be there. We'll talk again, but I can't be there for you right now. And
Yeah.
that's it. Full stop, end of story. You
Yeah.
don't need to explain yourself because we then find ourselves or we can find ourselves backing ourselves into a corner because we can
I
say,
do
well, I
that.
can't do this. Yeah, I've done it so many times. I can't do this right now because I'm doing this. And then it'll be, oh, well, that's okay. Then if you're free on Friday, you can do it on Friday then, can't you?
Yeah.
Do you know? Because,
I think we had this discussion recently with Dad, didn't we? He'd wanted me to go and visit, and he seemed, well, because he's the way he is, not he seems to, he ignores the fact that I have three children and other family commitments and would like me to just go and spend days and days and days. And I didn't want to because I didn't want to. And on top of that, I have three children and I have the smallest one is still in school, so as a mother, would like to be here for him in the morning and the night. And my older two are very good at, looking after him if I need them to, but that's not their responsibility, it's mine. And we were talking about me about how when he asks me, and I was struggling, and I put my hands up and admit I find this particular thing that we're discussing this week so hard. I haven't yet got a handle on this putting boundaries down and holding to them. I really haven't. But so I was trying to find an excuse for why I couldn't go. Was going to go up for the day, but not go up for 3 and 4 days at a time. And you said to me, don't use an excuse because if you say something like, because the train ticket, the cost, if you say something like you can't afford it right now, you know what he's like. He'll just be like, right, and put the money in your bank and say, no, you can't afford it. So if you give excuses like that, they will just take those excuses down one by one and then you have no excuses. So if you don't give them one in the first place, I'm not doing it because I'm not doing it. And it's that simple. They've got nothing to work with then, have they?
it is harder, but you will
Yeah,
feel more empowered. Because again, if you start making excuses, and they could be very valid excuses,
yeah,
you are putting yourself on the back foot by doing that. You're putting yourself on the
yeah.
back foot. And again, they don't deserve an explanation.
No,
You
no,
know, they don't, nobody deserves an explanation under these circumstances. I mean, yes, there are certain, I'm late for work. Why? That's different,
yeah,
but under these circumstances, you don't have to explain yourself. That,
you don't.
and the less you say,
The
like you
better.
said, the less
Yeah,
ammunition the narcissist has to come back
yeah,
at you with whatever they're going to, and they
yeah,
will if you give them the opportunity to do that. So this kind of rolls on into conversational boundaries.
yeah,
So again, limiting discussions about triggering topics or declining to engage when they start waffling on and gossiping about family members or your friends or fill in the blank. And it's about putting a stop to that straight away. Especially, I mean, gossip to me just I fucking hate it. It's like people who have got nothing better to do with their time engage in gossip. It's like a filler because they've got nothing else to do. But
you,
narcissists use that specifically to turn one against the other. Their
like
gossip is
triangulation.
never idle. Yes,
Yeah,
it's never idle. It's, I'm telling you this about this person, so you will either see me in a better light or see them in a bad light.
Yeah.
It's always something that will benefit the narcissist. Always. It's never just
Yeah.
idle gossip.
No.
It's always it's always aimed and targeted specifically because that's how they work.
Yeah.
So the simple thing of either changing the subject, as we have done many times, many times, just, I mean, dad has said things to me, and I've just not responded whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then
Don't
I've just,
engage.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then just talked and totally gone on to something else. And
Yeah.
again, just saying, either if you can't not respond and feel you have to say something, be honest and just say,
Yeah.
I would prefer not to talk about this. Can we
Yeah.
talk about something else? You know,
Yeah, that's it.
I
And
don't want to talk about it.
if it continues, I don't know if I know we're going to discuss this a bit later, but if it
Yeah.
continues to be able to say, I'm not gonna continue on with this conversation if we
Yes.
continue to talk about this subject.
Yes.
And I know
Yes.
that is hard to do. It's not something I've been able to do yet, but it is something that you can work towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important because the more you hold your boundaries, the more you reinforce them. So, yeah, you might not be at that stage where you can say that yet,
Yeah.
but the closer you get to that stage and the more often you say it, the more the narcissist will realize that they're not getting what they want out of you. They'll do it to somebody else.
Yeah.
They will find someone to do it with, but they're not going to get it out of you.
No.
So they will eventually stop. I won't say they'll get bored, but they will turn
Won't waste their
direction.
energy, will they? If they know they're not getting, well, because it's the same with dad with you. There's things he'll say to me that he won't say to you because he knows he'll get nowhere with you,
Yeah,
whereas he can still press my buttons. So dad is learning, you're teaching him. I'm not going to
yeah,
respond to that. I'm not going to
yeah,
engage with that. I'm not going to, and like you said at the beginning, it's teaching him how to treat you. He doesn't want to treat you nicely. He doesn't
no,
want to, but what you're teaching him is that you won't stand for being treated badly, and so
yeah,
you will put your foot down, and so he'll stop
yeah,
because he's getting nowhere with you. Because a lot of the time as well is other than triangulation, a lot of the time as well, I mean, I'm speaking only from experience of dad, of course, but they will do it they're very watchful narcissists as well. It's like they throw the firecracker in and then see what happens. So I find with dad anyway that he'll say things to try and goad a reaction out of you. Do you know what I mean? Because if he can get you emotionally reacting, then he's got something to get his teeth into. So a lot of the time he does that, I think, and just not engaging at all. He's got, again, nothing to work with, so he can't carry on.
his house before they came over to England. And our niece, his granddaughter, lives with him. And God love her, she does absolutely nothing for herself. She just runs around like a little
Yeah,
little mouse after him all of the time.
yeah.
And at some stage, as they were getting ready to come over to England, she had asked him about the bags to take to England. And she came in, and I was up there because I was separating mum's ashes so he could bring them over to you and family members. And I had my back to him, and I was so glad because I swear to God I wanted to turn around and punch him in the face. But our niece came in, and she's right. I've got the suitcases, and he's like, right. So how many have we got? And she's like, well, we'll have five. We've got five. Now, an ordinary person who didn't want to have five suitcases would have said, oh, well, suitcases are hardback. Five's a bit much. I know. Let's try and go and find some soft bags, and we'll take the stuff out of the soft bags, the suitcases, and put them in the soft bags. That's an ordinary conversation between two ordinary people.
Yeah.
Dad's reaction: five suitcases? Five suitcases? We're taking five suitcases? Five suitcases? I swear to holy God, if he said it once, he said it five times. And I was, my mum nearly ended up in the sink because I was just like so angry, trying not to like throw the
Yeah.
jar at him,
Yeah.
And I was like, Pamela, you've got to breathe through this. He humiliated her the way he humiliated us as children. And I
Yeah.
tried my very best not to get involved because the less I involved, the less humiliated she would be. So my back was to her, so I wasn't. But and then she was all flustered. Well, you said that this was, and then he saw that he wasn't getting a reaction with me. I wasn't joining in. I sure as hell was not joining in, and I wasn't getting involved in the in the interaction. And then when God love her, she went off in a fluster. He sits there, and because he hasn't got a reaction one way, he then tried to get a reaction the other way, and he was like, "It's times like this I feel so bloody useless," waiting for me to say something.
Hmm.
And I didn't reply. I just
Yeah.
carried on doing what I was doing because and then he couldn't say anything else
Yeah.
because I hadn't reacted in either of those cases.
Yeah.
In either of the situations, I hadn't reacted. I mean,
Yeah.
he pissed me off to high hell. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but again, it was for I mean, it was just overkill. And for a
Yeah.
reaction and
Yeah.
for humiliation, I mean, she has spent days packing these bags and trying to organize while he's sitting in his wheelchair. And fair enough, he's disabled. He can't do as much as he used to and couldn't maybe help her. But instead of being grateful for her help, he just treated her like a piece of
And if she
dirt.
was able to hold her boundaries, she could have said to him, "Don't speak to me like that. I'm trying to help. I will
Yeah,
go and change and put them in soft. Is that what you want? Soft bags? But there's no need to speak to me like that." A bit
yeah,
like you did on one other occasion when he was very similar. You held boundaries for her and for your husband when he spoke to them badly. And so in that situation, if she was, which I understand why she wasn't able to, I'm not suggesting,
no,
that's a big amount to expect of her from the situation she's in, but would be to say, don't speak to me like that because she's a grown woman and he shouldn't speak to her like that,
no,
and that's one of the examples of a boundary that you can set.
yeah,
We all are deserving of respect and not to be
yes.
spoken to like that. I mean, even a child doesn't deserve to be spoken to like that.
Nobody does.
No,
Yeah,
but we're all and deserving of respect, and it's okay. That's not a punishment. That's not a telling somebody off. That is holding your boundary and saying, "Have some respect for me. I will
yes,
not allow myself to be disrespected like this. Don't speak to
absolutely.
me like that. Otherwise, you can
Yeah,
do it yourself."
yeah. Pack your own
Mhm.
fucking suitcases.
Exactly. 5 of them.
All five of them.
All 5.
Okay, so our last sort of boundary that we're going to look at is a time and energy boundaries.
Yeah.
So again, managing schedules, saying no to a commitment, Kazi, or carving out time for self-care.
Yeah.
So we know how great you are at saying no to people.
No to people.
That's
Yeah.
your favorite thing.
Yeah.
So so if you were being pressed
Mm.
for your
Well,
time commitment, what boundary could you could
Well,
you
I
could
could
you
say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but I cannot help this weekend," or just "I cannot help," and so it's not moved to another weekend. Or to be honest with you, I'm burnt out and I need some alone time to recharge, or I need some time to myself. I need some self-care time, or
yeah,
any of the above. And
yeah,
again, there's no as a complete sentence. You don't need, "Oh no, I can't because I'm doing X, Y, and Z." Because usually that's worked around, well, why don't you come this day instead? Or, "Oh, well, I could do that day instead." If someone says, you just say, "I'm so sorry, I can't." Or a lot of the time I find that a bit sometimes things are said without a direct question of you. So someone saying, "Oh, I've got so much to do and I'm not going to be able to get it all done on my own." And then the pause. And I have this tendency to jump in and go, which is what is wanted. "Oh, well, I'll help. I'll do this. I'll do that." Whereas just don't say anything. Just don't say anything. You're not responsible, or you could say, "Oh, that does sound like a lot you've got to do. What are you going to do?" And don't jump in and say, "I'll help."
don't be Kazi. Don't
No, don't
be
be,
don't be a Kazi.
yeah,
Don't be a
don't be,
Kazi. Don't
don't
be
be
a
a
Kazi
Karen.
Kazi. Don't be a Karen.
But yeah, that's again, no excuses needed. Depending on who you're talking to, if it's a close friend or whatever, then
Yeah,
they're not trying to take advantage of you. You can say, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing this
yeah,
weekend and I can't." But in generally, when it is a close friend, they would immediately be like, "Oh yeah, no worries." Or you would want to reschedule with them. It's usually if it's a narcissistic person that will just suck and suck and suck you dry.
yeah.
Um, that you
Yeah.
really need to hold your boundaries and be like, no, I can't do that this weekend or any other weekend kind of thing. You
Yeah.
know, you don't really
The
want it
next
to be
52
restricted.
weekends are busy.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
I'm booked up for the next 6 months.
Yeah. Just not an
Okay, so
idea.
let's think of some top tips for setting boundaries and maintaining boundaries. We've got some statements, some clear statements, then and I'll write them in the description box below. So
Yeah,
if anybody wants to come in and copy and paste them and examine that would be
yeah,
great. I have a Substack account, and I do plan to create some downloads that people can go into the Substack account and take some downloads that I haven't got around to that yet. But watch the space, that is coming. And I will make a list of scripts that will be helpful for you to read and memorize if that's what you need to do for the first couple of times. So, clear communication.
yeah.
Be clear, because there's nothing less boundary like than a wishy washy
Karen.
than a wishy-washy Karen, than
Yeah,
a wishy-washy reply or excuse. Simple, direct language, and state what you mean. If we're talking about something that somebody is doing something that you don't like, when you do this thing, I feel this thing,
yeah,
please stop. Simple as that.
yeah.
And again, you don't need to explain yourself. I don't
No,
like it when you do this. Please stop.
yeah, that's it. There doesn't need to be a reason. You just don't like it.
Which should be respected.
Yeah,
Again, narcissists don't care about you, but there then is that option, like you said earlier, that if they're not going to stop, then you withdraw. You say,
yeah,
well, that's okay. You know what? If you're not going to stop, I'm going to go, or
yeah,
I'm going to leave this conversation, or I'm going to hang up the phone, fill in the blank of the situation, whatever
yeah,
you're doing. And then, of course, is the consistency, because
yeah,
the first time will be the hardest time. But the more often you do it, the easier it will become. It's like
yeah,
anything, the more often you do it, the easier it will become. And one of the reasons that we don't do things like setting boundaries is the fear of comeback.
yeah, yeah,
What's going to happen? What are they going to think about me? What's going to? And we have this imaginary conversation in our head that if I'm going to say that, and then they're going to say this, and then I'm going to. Most of the time, what you think is going to happen doesn't happen
no,
generally. So
yeah,
if you've done it the first time and you get to the realization that actually it worked and nothing bad happened, that will give you the confidence to continue doing it
yeah,
on a more regular occasion.
yeah,
And if, in all fairness, and I know it's the hardest thing ever, but when it comes to a narcissist, you want to get to the point you don't give a shit what they think of you
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Well,
You
we've
know,
discussed that, haven't we? We've said, oh, well, what if I say this to Dad and he never speaks to me again? And then we've both kind of laughed and gone, oh,
yeah.
we should be so lucky. Do
Yeah,
you know
that
what
would
I
be
mean?
great.
The worst thing that's going to happen is they get really cross and never speak to you. Oh, how terrible. Then you
Yeah.
won't have to put up with this again.
Oh,
So, yeah.
yeah.
But I know for some people, I know it's a very real,
No, it is.
I mean, for me, it's not, it's that guilt thing again. For me, it's the how do I live with the guilt I feel because I've hurt them, because I feel I've hurt them.
Yeah, so consistency, if we're consistent and we keep on doing it. So for example, if you have someone ringing you late at night or ringing you at a particular time that doesn't suit, and you have stated that you do not want them to ring at late at night or at a particular time, just stop answering the call.
Mm.
Just stop answering the call, stop answering the phone, stop replying to text messages.
Yeah,
Again, eventually, when the narcissist can't get what they want from you, they'll get it from somebody else.
yeah.
And if they keep on ringing and don't get what they want, they'll
They just,
eventually stop. They will.
yeah, yeah. Because you're
Um,
enforcing a boundary by just not engaging again, like we said before.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, what's the next one, Kazi?
Well, then once you've done that, then enforcing the consequences. So
Yeah,
try not to, as hard as it is, try not to go back on what you've started. So if you've laid a boundary of, I don't want to discuss this subject, and they every time they encroach on that, you say to them, I've asked you before that I don't want to discuss this subject. It's not up for discussion. And then if that continues, say I'm going to leave the conversation, like you said, leave the room, put the phone down and keep doing that until they get the message that you will not discuss the subject, because they will push back. It won't just be one and then that's it, because they're narcissists and that's what they do. But for you to just say, look, I've mentioned a couple of times, I don't want to discuss this. If you continue to try and discuss this, I'm just going to have to leave the conversation, or I'm just going to hang up the phone, or I'm going to go, and follow that through, because it's the follow through. If you don't follow it through, then they'll be, oh, she doesn't mean what she says. But if
Yeah.
you follow it through and keep following it through, then they'll stop doing it. They will
Yes.
stop doing it
Yes.
because they're
Yes.
not getting the reaction they want, you
No.
know?
No. And that's what it is with a narcissist. It's what they want.
Yeah,
So start small. If
yeah,
you have struggled with with what we've been talking about, and if you're watching this and going, oh my God, there's no way I could do this, right? Because it just terrifies the pants off you.
yeah,
Start small. Start something, setting a low stake boundary. So
yeah,
try saying no to a small favor that they want you to do. Just say, no, I can't do that. And so it's not massive, but the more you can do it, the easier it will get. But
yeah,
it's like with everything, start small. If you're going to the gym, start small. If you were doing a new health regime, start small. But when you're doing something that scares you, the
yeah,
more often you do it, the more courage you will get to
yeah.
continue. So clear communication, consistency is the key. Get some consequences and start small. If you haven't already got boundaries in place,
That's all. I
start
think
small.
I think another thing I was thinking of as well is, and if this helps, because I mean, this is something that is really hard to do, even when you're aware of all these things, because Pamela and I talk a lot about kind of our situation and dad, and I know all of this stuff. I talk about all of this stuff with Pam. I still find it really hard to do. So another little idea is, as well as starting small, start small with the people who you know love you so much, like
Yeah.
some really good friends or your family that you know love you so much that if you say no, you won't get any reaction badly off them. Or perhaps say to them, I'm practicing putting some boundaries in place. So I might say no to things, or I might, say I'm not going to come out for a cup of tea, or something like that, because I'm trying to put boundaries in place to practice for when I need to, and do that with the people that love you first. And I know you may be thinking, oh, that's not a true representation, but just being able to do that, practicing of saying it, and and you'll get used to that, and then you'll be able to put it into place, or put those boundaries into place with people that maybe you're not so sure of, or might react badly, but you've already done it a few times with people who love you and who won't react badly. You've done it and you've got comfortable in your own skin saying those things out loud. So that might help as well.
Of course, this is not going to go without a hitch. This is that
No.
we are going to expect pushback, and we do need to be ready for that. It would be remiss of us to say, "Oh yes, this will be a breeze, nothing will
I'm going to
happen."
go fine. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be all wonderful. As Kazi mentioned before, the reason narcissists resist boundaries is because they thrive in control,
Yeah.
and they view boundaries as a threat to their dominance. So they're going to make you feel guilty, or they're going to try to make you feel
Yeah.
guilty. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to you whether you accept that
Allow it.
gift of guilt.
Yeah. Well, I
Or
like that.
yes, if
Say
you
no, thank
accept,
you.
yes,
Yeah.
no, thank you. I don't like that one. Can you? Yeah, you can take it back. Be an
Yes.
Indian giver. Have it back. I don't want it. Thanks very much.
Don't want that grenade. Have it
Yes,
back.
there you
Yes.
go. I've taken the pin out for you. There you are.
Yeah.
It was a bit stiff. So yeah, they're going to try and trip you, play the victim, escalate the conflict. Typical narcissistic
Yeah.
tricks.
Yeah.
Be ready for them. Be mindful of them.
Yeah.
So again, it's staying calm and standing firm. A bit like what we said before. I understand that you're upset, but this is my boundary and my
Yeah.
decision stands, and this is what I've chosen to do. That
No.
they're not going to like it because you are taking your control back.
Yeah.
They're not going to like it.
Slipping out of
Again,
their grasp, aren't you? Yeah.
absolutely. And again, no over explaining. We'll repeat that again. No over explaining. Keep your reasoning simple and keep it clear and keep it concise and probably as short as humanly fucking possible. I'm not happy with that. Please don't do it again. Thank you. End of story. You know,
Yeah.
not would you mind not doing that? Because it's not a question. It's not
No, you
would you
don't
mind not doing that? It's I don't like it. Don't do it again.
do it. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, get some support. Like you said before, you can you can practice with close friends, family, people you know love you, but get some allies behind you. Get people you know will be in your corner to
Yeah.
help you with the fight.
Yeah, definitely. Because they'll help reinforce what you're trying to do, won't they? They'll back you up
Yeah,
all of the way. And then you've got that support structure so you don't feel so much like you're doing it on your own,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So instead of seeing it as a threatening thing or being scared of the resistance, think to yourself, actually, this shows that what I'm doing is working.
Yes.
Me setting these boundaries must be working, otherwise they wouldn't be pushing back. So see it as confirmation that you're actually doing the right thing, that you're actually holding your boundary, and that it's having an effect that that person then is trying to push back. So if you can look at it, spin a positive light on it, then it'll help to strengthen you, won't it?
Someone's
Yeah.
upset because you know you're setting boundaries, it means that they were benefiting from the lack of them.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's the key, isn't it? That's why they're upset.
Yeah,
Anyone that's upset because you've set boundaries is because they were getting a lot of benefit from you not having them. Somebody who loves you and who wants you to fare well or take care of yourself wouldn't be upset at you setting boundaries. Why would they
yeah.
be? You
No,
know?
no. I mean, it's the same. I message you and I'll send you a text and say, "Are you up for a natter?" And if you come back to me and say, "Actually, I'm up to my eyeballs because A, B, C, and D," and I go, "No worries, sure, we'll figure it out next week
Yeah.
or tomorrow or whatever," because that's a normal response.
Yeah.
That's a normal response. That's
Yeah.
you know that's what you expect. Anybody with a normal mindset and a normal psyche to say is,
Yeah.
yeah, you know what? Don't worry about it. Not this. Oh, right. Oh, well, I'm not important to you then. Or, oh, well, I suppose everybody else is more important than me, are they? Etc. Etc. Fill in the blank. I wonder who I
Yeah.
sound like then.
I was gonna say I've heard this. I've heard this somewhere before.
I know you mentioned earlier that you struggle with this, but do you have a story where you have put boundaries down that sort that is you know a success story?
I think I used this example for something else we were discussing at another podcast. I can't quite remember what it was. And I know this comes up a lot, but it's because it's happened recently. And it meshed us all with dad again is mum passing away. And because I'm not great at boundaries, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I actually said and held a boundary. It was more of a not engaging, holding a boundary. So when dad had this insane need to try and get out of us what our regrets were when mum died, to say that we hadn't been good enough daughters, or we hadn't phoned her enough, or we hadn't been over enough, or we'd abandoned them, or etc. And he kept saying it when I was over the first time when you were staying there and I stayed, and then any of the following times that I was over, up until recently this January when I was over, he still tried the whole regrets thing. And my boundary was just to not engage with the conversation, to let him waffle on and on and on and on. So when he said, "Oh, I'm sure you've got regrets too," or "I'm sure you're feeling regretful at things too," I just sat and never said a word. And in previous times, I would have felt the guilt. I would have accepted that gift of guilt, and I would have said, "Oh yes, I feel terrible," and give him what he wanted, which was for me to admit that I was a terrible person, because that's what he wanted. I mean, there was no grand plan that went into that, I have to say. I actually think, in a strange way, mum passing away, it was more to do with just, and I think I said this to you so many times, it was more to do with I did have some regrets, but mum and I were quite close, and they felt very private, and I wanted to tell her when I went to the funeral home and saw her, you came with me, you gave me the privacy I needed to talk to her. And I said what I needed to say with her. And dad, for all of our lives, has sullied our relationship with mum one way or the other. And I didn't want him to, because I knew he just wanted to know so that he could feel good I don't know why, but he could feel like, yes, I finally got her to admit. And what I wanted to do was say to my mum what I wanted to say to my mum out of love that I felt for her. I didn't want anything that he did or would have to do with it, or what he would think or feel or say, to be involved in that between me and mum. And so it wasn't to put my foot down. It was more just not engage. And another one small way, and I felt very strong for doing this. I don't know if I've told you yet, is that I recently had gone up to visit my dad. He'd come to England to visit his family, and he'd wanted me to go up for like 4 days or whatever. But I'd gone up, and I had completely not put my boundaries in for so many other reasons because of other people that were going to be there. And really, I would like to have not been there while they were there. And I didn't hold my boundary for that. Lots of other reasons. However, while I was there for that day, we were having conversation, and my dad is a great hypocrite in that he will tell everyone else to be respectful, never interrupt, and all these things. But it's the one thing he loves to do is cut right across what you're saying and interrupt everything you're saying and tell you how wrong you are. And I was talking, and he kept jumping in. And I got so cross, and probably it was a response, a reaction rather than a response. Well, but I'm glad that my anger was there because it made me say something, because I was in my head, I was thinking, how rude. You always tell us off for doing this. You've always said all our lives how bad we are if we've ever interrupted. And then you're just interrupting. And I turned around and I said to him, if you will let me finish, which is what he normally says. And then he shut up. And then I carried on what I was saying. And I don't think I've ever done that to my dad in my life. But it was just, I was a bit. So in that way, I held a boundary of saying to him, don't interrupt me. Don't speak to me like that.
Absolutely.
Don't. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's something
Mhm.
that I did loads of other times and, or that it was an ongoing thing. But they are small instances when I've held my boundary, and I haven't felt guilt for doing it afterwards, which is normally what I do. And that's good as well. That for me is more progress than anything else, is than not afterwards thinking I shouldn't have said that. Oh God, I feel terrible, because that will be what stops me from putting my boundary in place. So yeah, so two occasions there. So
Well done, you.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was, I'm
I
proud
thought
of
you'd
you.
like
I'm
I thought
proud of
you'd like
you.
that second one.
Well,
Thank you.
I like both of them, but definitely like the second one. Well done for you. And do you know what? You're saying it's not a big deal, but for anyone who doesn't know you, I think it is a big deal. That is a big deal
Yeah,
for you to stand up to dad. It is a big deal,
yeah,
for what he put us through. And, that just shows you how far you're going, how you're getting stronger and
yeah,
stronger and stronger and stronger. On each occasion, you have to interact with him, whether that be via phone or face to face. You're getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And by implementing the things that we're talking about, and will
yeah.
work, that's amazing. Well done. I'm so glad. I wish I'd have been there.
Thank
Oh, what to be a fly on the wall. I wish I'd have been there. I'd just love to see his face.
you. I didn't look. I didn't dare look at him when I said it, but he probably was quite shocked, I'd imagine, because me, I wouldn't say boo to a goose with Dad, would I? So yeah, but yeah,
Yeah, well,
I
good
was
for
I
you.
was cross.
Good for you. And it
Thank you.
doesn't matter that you were cross. The fact that you did it was
Mm,
outstanding, darling. Outstanding. I'm so proud of you.
thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
For me, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about explaining. So it took me, a bit like yourself, it took
Yeah,
me ages to realize that I didn't need to explain myself when I set a boundary or when I told somebody I couldn't do something. It took me just as long to put that into practice, because you're like, oh, I don't have to explain, but putting it into practice, like we said earlier, sometimes it can be scary and it feels hard not telling your life story for the reasons you can't do something. When Dad came back from England, he wasn't well. He ended up going to hospital. He went into hospital on the Thursday, and they ended up keeping him in. So I wake up on Friday morning to our niece saying, Grandad stayed in hospital last night and I stayed with him. I was like, oh, that's very good. She's such a good, good, good woman. She really is. Heart of gold. And then she said, Grandad wanted to know if you could come and visit him during the day because he doesn't want to be alone in hospital and it's a bit lonely. Now, first of all, my immediate reaction is tough shit. Everybody else in the hospital has to sit there all day without having someone there to hold their hand. So, sorry, your necessity to have someone pay you attention 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because
Yeah.
your granddaughter isn't there, isn't my responsibility. And as
Yeah.
we have said, when mum was in hospital when we were younger, dad had to work until 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and no one was in the hospital with her for all the day. She just had
No.
to kind of entertain
No.
herself.
Yeah.
So, of course, my first reaction was a bit annoyed that the world does not revolve around you, dad. So I'm afraid no,
Yeah.
I won't be coming. And my second reaction was, or well, yeah, I had a reaction and then a response. So my reaction was, there's no way I'm going. Absolutely no way I'm going. But the second point is, I couldn't actually go. I could if I managed to swabble all my whole life around and suddenly drop everything that I had planned
Mm.
to do on the Friday. I have responsibilities at home. I have a job. So I then simply stated, texting our niece back, and said, I'm sorry, I can't come during today, but I will come and see him this evening, which I already planned to do. Because I knew he was in
Yeah.
hospital that night, I figured they'd keep him in a following night. So in my head, I was like, right, I'll go and see him tomorrow evening, before I woke up with the text asking me to be
Yeah.
there during the day. Now I know she will have relayed that back to him,
Yeah.
and I know he won't have been happy,
Yeah.
but I didn't care.
No.
He needs to
Yeah.
know that we're not just all
Yeah.
available, and we can't just drop everything for him every time he's in
No.
hospital. Because quite frankly, if I'd have done that in the last 6 months, I'd never have been bloody home. So for me, it's,
No.
you don't owe anyone an explanation why you're setting a boundary. It's your choice if you do something or not, which we've said can feel really hard at the beginning. But again, the more often you do it, the easier it gets. You'll feel more in
Yeah.
control. It gives you a sense of power. And it's a huge step forward if you can do it.
Well, I'm proud of you too. I know you do it more regularly, but it doesn't mean that it's any easier.
Yeah.
It can still be really hard,
Yeah.
especially because you're the one that's nearer to him, so it's expected of you.
So that brings our podcast to a close. Kazi, have you got any encouraging words for our listeners / viewers?
Yes, I think key is to start small and get that support system in place if you can. The people who who love you, practice on them or tell them that you're putting boundaries. You're going to start trying to place boundaries in, so you might try it out on them first so they
Yeah.
know. And really believe in yourself, because like I said, I find it hard, so I'm not going to sit here and spout to everybody else and I don't do it. I find it hard too, but if you could just find some little strength inside you, some little bit of strength to just start really small and build on that. And like we said before, and I love this, to try and reframe that pushback as on a positive note, that it shows you that you're doing it right because they're not happy. So you must be doing it right, and see that as a win rather
Yeah,
than being worried about it. See
absolutely.
it as a win. And know that we're here cheering you on. And if you want to comment below on our videos and tell us at a time that if it's something you've been able to do because of this podcast, or even that you've already done it, let us know when you've been able to hold your boundary or any small win that you've had. And we absolutely are here cheering you on, because everybody deserves their own autonomy and deserves to be respectfully treated and have their boundaries respected, every single one of you. And we are here right behind you, encouraging you to be able to put that in place.
Everything she said. Okie dokes. Well, it's time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you.
If
Yeah,
if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and maybe considering subscribing to the channel. And thumbs up. Yes, give us a thumbs up. And if you know anyone that this video will help, share it. Share it with
yeah,
them, because you know what? If we can help more people, happy days.
yeah,
The more we can help, the better.
yeah,
So
definitely.
we'll say bye from here.
And bye from her. And
Bye.
we'll see you all next week. Bye. Bye.